Cooper, what is your major malfunction? Didn't your mother pay enough attention to you as a child? Have you forgotten your handbook again? So help me, I'll reach through this monitor like God Almighty himself and strangle you if you don't see that handbook in your hands by next class. Cadet Cooper, at ease. Now pay attention. This class is particularly relevant to you. For the rest of you, please take your seats. The topic for today is, how do I not give up? This is part 3 of the Launch Your Startup Now boot camp. Learn how to start your own web app or app startup in an exciting 23rd century science fiction universe. This course is also called Startup School for Coders, Ensign Edition. It is now $22.91. Your instructor, Commander Avery Moss, will not be conducting this class due to reassignment. I am Daniel W. Howard, Commandant of Startup School for Coders and the Interplanetary Fleet Star Academy, and I will be your instructor this term. If you look in the right corner below, you'll see that I am transmitting to you from a holographic simulation, which is located in HoloSim 13 in Fleet Headquarters in San Francisco. This is the training simulation of the Starship Nautilus. You will address me as Commandant. I will address you as Cadet. Now let's get started. Your boot camp handbook is a one-page PDF sheet entitled 7 Key Areas to Bootstrap Your Startup from Nothing to Launch. I see that most of you have gotten your handbook, but a few of you have still failed to get your handbook. If you do not get your handbook, you will not complete this course, you will not be promoted to ensign, and you will have to return home to live with your mother and cry your eyes out like a little girl. So get your handbook. Send an email to 7keys@startupschoolforcoders.com with cheat sheet in the subject and bootstrap in the body. Physical and mental training. The Star Academy physical training regimen is both diet and exercise. Physical training is both physical body training and physical brain training. Physical body training builds a physique that is agile, lean, and strong. Physical brain training builds a healthy brain that is fast, coordinated, disciplined, has high memory recall, high sensory load, analytical, and decisive. This will be very important for starting your own startup and becoming an ensign. To burn out is to become completely exhausted through overwork and to give up on your startup permanently and never work on it again. You will not burn out. Common startup wisdom says to avoid burnout, they say, be passionate, permanently be motivated and hyped up, have an iron will, that is never surrender, and finally, don't be weak. Only weaklings burn out. I have to tell you today that that's just plain wrong and it's complete crap. How do you not burn out? Through personal experience, I have discovered the way to not burn out. I will tell you now. The first thing is do not rely on extreme emotion. This includes both positive emotion and negative emotion. People think that they need to feel the I'm motivated emotion to work. They don't. How I feel has nothing to do with reality. Train yourself to work at a steady pace and at predictable times and to control your emotions, both good and bad. This is essential to not burning out. Motivation is like sugar. When you eat a lot of sugar, you get hyped up. You get a sugar rush. A sugar rush doesn't and can't last forever. No matter how you try to perpetuate it, you will eventually have a sugar crash. You will get distracted easily, unproductive, and burn out. The rush is not worth the crash, either with sugar or with motivation. The rush is usually less productive than you feel it is. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Common startup wisdom says that 6 months is a good timeline for startups. But I've listened carefully to many entrepreneurs, and often it takes 2 to 3 years for startups to really start working out. I do not say this to you to disillusion you. It's only to hammer home that you cannot rush to the finish line. You can't hype yourself up for 6 months, work like a machine, and then be done and fall apart. You need to set up a pace and continue going for as long as it takes. And you can't stay motivated the entire time. You can't be on a sugar rush or a motivation rush for the entire time. Common startup wisdom again. Common startup wisdom says be passionate, permanently be motivated and hyped up. Have an iron will, never surrender. Don't be weak, only weaklings burn out. These are all emotions. You feel either you can take on the world, but is that really true? Can you really take on the world just because you feel like you can take on the world? Or you feel that you are doomed? Are you really doomed just because you feel doomed? Emotions are illusions, not reality. Just because you're up doesn't mean you'll be successful. Just because you're down doesn't mean that you'll fail. You can't rely on emotions because they don't tell the truth. How to not give up. Train yourself to, 1, be even tempered. Don't be too up or too down. 2, to recognize and ignore your emotions. When you're having an emotion, recognize that you're having an emotion and practice ignoring it. 3, make decisions rationally. When you're in the middle of an emotion, slow yourself down. Take some time to calm down and then look at the situation rationally and then make a decision. Don't make a decision in the spur of the moment or when you are under extreme emotion. 4, pace yourself. Go at a steady pace. 5, give yourself a break. This is something I see too often with entrepreneurs. They're so hard on themselves. They drive themselves too hard. Give yourself a break. It'll be okay. Don't berate or criticize yourself. It's unproductive. It doesn't work. 2, reset your work. When you seem to be getting out of control and you're getting down and you're not achieving your goals, go and look at your calendar, your goals, and your expectations and reset them from scratch. Whether this is over the period of several months or whether this is a week. Reset your work. If it's not working out, then start fresh the next week or the next month. And finally, 6thly, dismiss slippery slope arguments. It's easy to put yourself into your mind where you say, if I don't work today, then I won't work tomorrow, then I'll stop working for the rest of my life. That's a slippery slope argument. And that's a logical fallacy. Just because you skip today, you can start again tomorrow. Trust yourself. Trust that you can take a day off and then pick up tomorrow and do it again. Don't don't fall into, just because I did one little thing, I'm going to keep doing that, and then it will inevitably turn into a huge thing and fall apart. From day one, be aware that all of this is happening. Be aware that all these emotions are going to be going through you. Be aware that you're going to fly off the handle and behave irrationally. Observe yourself and then work on yourself. Emotions lie. If you need more convincing, let me tell you, emotions lie. Run experiments and convince yourself. For me, sometimes I would think to myself, I didn't feel like working, or I don't feel like working. But then when I tried working, after a few minutes, it was okay. I actually felt more like working than I expected. 2, I felt that if I don't work today, I'll never start again. And I gave myself a pass for one day, and it was okay. I actually did work again. I was wrong. And 3, my startup is doomed. I would think my startup is doomed. But then the next day, I would say, it's actually not so bad. Actually, I'll just continue. Even if it is doomed, I will just go ahead and keep and try to do it anyway. So tend to see your work as an experiment. You have a hypothesis, you think you know what's going to happen, but continue on anyway and see if what you thought happened is going to happen actually does happen. You will likely be surprised at how often you are actually wrong and how often your feelings about what will happen turn out to not be what actually happens. Observe and record those results and prove to yourself that emotions lie. Build a mind trick repertoire. The little mind tricks that I use to keep going are, if I quit, think about all the customers who will never benefit from my product. Sometimes I can't motivate myself with money or with the idea that I am providing something for my family. But a lot of times, in the end, what really motivates me is I say, well, even if I am not successful financially, think of all the customers that could benefit from my product, but will never receive it because I didn't finish it. And that helps me to keep going. Second thing I do is I say to myself, when I don't feel like doing something, I'm usually wrong if I do it for 10 minutes. This has happened to me all the time. And despite that, I always think that that if I don't feel like doing something, that I'll actually have an unproductive session. But I always remember this saying, and so I try to do something for just 10 minutes, and most of the time I actually get into it, and I actually get much more accomplished than I ever expected. The third thing that I think about is I will probably fail, but I'll just do it anyway to see if it's true. Many times I feel like I'm going to fail. And I always have to remember that I should just carry through and see if I'm going to be correct. Again, it's like the last slide in conducting that experiment. Yes, I'm probably doomed, but I'll just continue to do it anyway and see if that turns out to be the truth. So what I urge you is actually build up a mind trick repertoire that you can call upon to control your emotions. My repertoire may not work for you, but if you make a concerted effort to come up with these with some simple tricks that keep you moving forward, even when you don't feel like you can, then you can always call upon these when you start to slow down. There are too many books on motivation, getting things done, and being organized. They don't matter. It's not your goal to find the best motivation or self-help book. Just choose one, even if it isn't the best, and follow it as your Bible on motivation. If you don't know, then you can choose what I choose, which is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. But it doesn't matter whether you choose The One Thing or you look for a different book on motivation, whatever helps you. But just buy any book, but only buy one book and then be done. And continually refer back to that single book for motivation and other self-help. You can change. You can win. I've struggled for 20 years with motivation, but I feel that I finally mastered it. I feel at peace with myself. I have confidence in my ability to not give up. You can make that change too, even if you haven't spent 20 years struggling with it. You can win too. You can master your emotions and discard motivation and hyping yourself up in order to work more effectively and not need motivation to continue. This third video has been about replacing rah-rah style motivation with a more rational and practical style of motivation so that you can keep going, be it 6 months or several years. It's all about not giving up. It is a style that suits the intellectual mentality of coders better. The next video, the fourth video, is going to be about inventing a startup idea or a product idea. This will be the idea that is at the core of your startup. A special note, if you work at an incubator, a venture capitalist, Y Combinator, consult to startup founders, run an entrepreneur podcast, even run your own startup school, or in any other way deal with people who are starting their own startup, I want to hear from you so I can work with you. Contact me through LinkedIn. Your Bootcamp Handbook is a one-page PDF sheet entitled 7 Key Areas to Bootstrap Your Startup from Nothing to Launch. You really need this handbook. It's free, and you need to contact me in order to get it. It actually has a lot of extra information that will not be included in these videos and can make the difference between you starting your own startup and you failing. Send an email to 7keys@startupschoolforcoders.com with cheat sheet in the subject and bootstrap in the body. I will continue to look for an available instructor to take over this class. Adjutant? What about Lieutenant Adderus? Yeah, but can't he get out of it? These cadets are driving me crazy. Anyway, before the next class, take some time to think about your difficulties with motivation in the past, or even right now, and think about what mind tricks you can develop to not give up. Cadets, attention! Class dismissed.